How does an individual who lived just for 39 years ignite a spiritual revolution, transform the destiny of millions, and still continues to influence the nations even after 120 years after his death? This is the story of Swami Vivekananda, a fearless monk whose message of unity, strength, and spiritual freedom continues to resonate across the globe even today. Welcome to Biography Central, your destination for the most inspiring stories of remarkable lives that have shaped the course of history. In this comprehensive audiobook series, we will explore the extraordinary journey of Swami Vivekananda, the man who brought the ancient wisdom of India to the West and reminded the world of the oneness of all humanity. Each episode unveils a new facet of his life, his struggles, his triumphs, his unyielding dedication to humanity, and his timeless teachings that inspire millions to this day. So join us as we begin this incredible journey.
Chapter 1. Early Years. Swami Vivekananda, the great soul loved and revered in East and West alike, as the rejuvenator of Hinduism in India, and the preacher of its eternal truths abroad, was born at 6:33, a few minutes before sunrise, on Monday, January 12, 1863. It was the day of the great Hindu festival Makara Sankranti, when special worship is offered to the Ganga by millions of devotees. Thus, the future Vivekananda first drew breath. When the air above the sacred river not far from the house was reverberating with the prayers, worship, and religious music of thousands of Hindu men and women. Before Vivekananda was born, his mother, like many other pious Hindu mothers, had observed religious vows, fasted and prayed, so that she might be blessed with a son who would do honor to the family. She requested a relative who was living in Varanasi to offer special worship to the Vireshwara Shiva of that holy place, and seek his blessings, for Shiva, the great god of renunciation, dominated her thought. One night, she dreamt that this supreme deity aroused himself from his meditation and agreed to be born as her son. When she woke, she was filled with joy. The mother, Bhuvaneshwari Devi, accepted the child as a boon from Vireshwara Shiva and named him Vireshwara. The family, however, gave him the name of Narendranath Datta, calling him for short Narendra, or more endearingly, Narain. The Datta family of Kolkata, into which Narendranath had been born, was well known for its affluence, philanthropy, scholarship, and independent spirit. The grandfather, Durgacharan, after the birth of his first son, had renounced the world in search of God. The father, Vishwanath, an attorney at law of the High Court of Kolkata, was versed in English and Persian literature and often entertained himself and his friends by reciting from the Bible and the poetry of Hafiz, both of which, he believed, contained truths unmatched by human thinking elsewhere. He was particularly attracted to the Islamic culture, with which he was familiar because of his close contact with the educated Muslims of northwestern India. Moreover, he derived a large income from his law practice and, unlike his father, thoroughly enjoyed the worldly life. An expert in cookery, he prepared rare dishes and liked to share them with his friends. Travel was another of his hobbies. Though agnostic in religion and a mocker of social conventions, he possessed a large heart and often went out of his way to support idle relatives, some of whom were given to drunkenness. Once, when Narendra protested against his lack of judgment, his father said, "How can you understand the great misery of human life? When you realize the depths of men's suffering, you will sympathize with these unfortunate creatures who try to forget their sorrows, even though only for a short while, in the oblivion created by intoxicants." Naren's father, however, kept a sharp eye on his children and would not tolerate the slightest deviation from good manners. Bhuvaneshwari Devi, the mother, was cast in a different mold. Regal in appearance and gracious in conduct, she belonged to the old tradition of Hindu womanhood. As mistress of a large household, she devoted her spare time to sewing and singing, being particularly fond of the great Indian epics, the Ramayana and the Mahabharata, large portions of which she had memorized. She became the special refuge of the poor, and commanded universal respect because of her calm resignation to God, her inner tranquility, and her dignified detachment in the midst of her many arduous duties. 2 sons were born to her besides Narendranath, and 4 daughters, 2 of whom died at an early age. Narendra grew up to be a sweet, sunny-tempered, but very restless boy. 2 nurses were necessary to keep his exuberant energy under control, and he was a great tease to his sisters. In order to quiet him, the mother often put his head under the cold water tap, repeating Shiva's name, which always produced the desired effect. Naren felt a child's love for birds and animals, and this characteristic reappeared during the last days of his life. Among his boyhood pets were a family cow, a monkey, a goat, a peacock, and several pigeons and guinea pigs. The coachman of the family, with his turban, whip, and bright-coloured livery, was his boyhood ideal of a magnificent person, and he often expressed the ambition to be like him when he grew up. Narendra bore a striking resemblance to the grandfather who had renounced the world to lead a monastic life, and many thought that the latter had been reborn in him. The youngster developed a special fancy for wandering monks whose very sight would greatly excite him. One day, when such a monk appeared at the door and asked for alms, Narendra gave him his only possession, the tiny piece of new cloth that was wrapped round his waist. Thereafter, whenever a monk was seen in the neighborhood, Narendra would be locked in a room, but even then he would throw out of the window whatever he found near at hand as an offering to the holy man. In the meantime, he was receiving his early education from his mother, who taught him the Bengali alphabet and his first English words, as well as stories from the Ramayana and the Mahabharata. During his childhood, Narendra, like many other Hindu children of his age, developed a love for the Hindu deities, of whom he had learnt from his mother. Particularly attracted by the heroic story of Rama and his faithful consort Sita, he procured their images, bedecked them with flowers, and worshipped them in his boyish fashion. But disillusionment came when he heard someone denounce marriage vehemently as a terrible bondage. When he had thought this over, he discarded Rama and Sita as unworthy of worship. In their place, he installed the image of Shiva, the god of renunciation, who was the ideal of the yogis. Nevertheless, he retained a fondness for the Ramayana. At this time, he daily experienced a strange vision when he was about to fall asleep. Closing his eyes, he would see between his eyebrows a ball of light of changing colors, which would slowly expand and at last burst, bathing his whole body in a white radiance. Watching this light, he would gradually fall asleep. Since it was a daily occurrence, he regarded the phenomenon as common to all people, and was surprised when a friend denied ever having seen such a thing. Years later, however, Narendra's spiritual teacher, Sri Ramakrishna, said to him, "Naren, my boy, do you see a light when you go to sleep?" Ramakrishna knew that such a vision indicated a great spiritual past and an inborn habit of meditation. The vision of light remained with Narendra until the end of his life, though later it lost its regularity and intensity. While still a child, Narendra practiced meditation with a friend before the image of Shiva. He had heard that the holy men of ancient India would become so absorbed in contemplation of God that their hair would grow and gradually enter into the earth, like the roots of the banyan tree. While meditating, therefore, he would open his eyes now and then to see if his own hair had entered into the earth. Even so, during meditation, he often became unconscious of the world. On one occasion, he saw in a vision a luminous person of serene countenance who was carrying the staff and water bowl of a monk. The apparition was about to say something when Naren became frightened and left the room. He thought later that perhaps this had been a vision of Buddha. At the age of 6, he was sent to a primary school. One day, however, he repeated at home some of the vulgar words that he had learnt from his classmates. Whereupon his disgusted parents took him out of the school and appointed a private tutor, who conducted classes for him and some other children of the neighborhood in the worship hall of the house. Naren soon showed a precocious mind and developed a keen memory. Very easily he learnt by heart the whole of a Sanskrit grammar and long passages from the Ramayana and the Mahabharata. Some of the friendships he made at this age lasted his whole lifetime. At school he was the undisputed leader. When playing his favorite game of king and the court, he would assume the role of the monarch and assign to his friends the parts of the ministers, commander-in-chief, and other state officials. He was marked from birth to be a leader of men, as his name, Narendra, Lord of Men, signified. Even at that early age, he questioned why one human being should be considered superior to another. In his father's office, separate tobacco pipes were provided for clients belonging to the different castes, as orthodox Hindu custom required, and the pipe from which the Muslims smoked was set quite apart. Narendra once smoked tobacco from all the pipes, including the one marked for the Muslims, and when reprimanded remarked, "I cannot see what difference it makes." In our next episode, we will continue exploring the fascinating early life of Swami Vivekananda. We'll uncover how the teachings of his parents, his fearless attitude, and his encounters with life's challenges shaped him into the remarkable leader we admire today. Join us as we delve into the lessons that laid the foundation for his journey towards becoming a spiritual icon. You won't want to miss these inspiring stories. Thank you for listening till the end. Please subscribe, turn on the notifications, like, comment, and share with your friends. This will help more listeners to discover our channel and content.